overwhelming favorite in Friday's election, Paul Kagame eyes a third term as Rwandan president. Investing in the next generation of African leaders at the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit.
My baby, you got me going crazy.
And in our Music Makers segment, the latest video from the sultry and sexy Afropop Nigerian performer Yemi Alade. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening. I'm Esther Gidu in for Vincent Makori, who will join us shortly. This is Africa 54. Rwandan President Paul Kagame is the overwhelming favorite in Friday's presidential election, where he is almost assured to extend his 17-year reign as the nation's head of state. According to Charles Munyaneza, Executive Secretary of the Rwanda Electoral Commission, more than 80% of Rwanda's 6.9 million registered voters cast their ballots. Polls closed in the afternoon, and provisional results are expected later today. The 59-year-old Kagame was running against Frank Habineza of the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda, the only permitted opposition party, and independent candidate Philippe Mpanyama. 3 other potential candidates were disqualified for allegedly failing to fulfill election requirements. 2 Rwandan voters explained their selections for president.
I voted for President Paul Kagame because he has worked to build new roads, to bring water to the people, and to construct new schools for everyone.
I chose this party simply because of its good platform. The platform, so the manifesto presented by Habineza, so was very interesting to me. That's why. So, for instance, the fact that he wants to develop the country. He wants to develop the country by reducing the step between rich people and poor people.
Now joining us on the phone from Kigali, Rwanda, with more election details is VOA Eddie Rema. Good evening, Eddie.
Good evening, Esther.
So, Eddie, if you could tell us how the polling exercise went this morning and whether there are any major issues regarding the polls.
Esther, polling started at 7 a.m. Kigali time, and it closed at 3 p.m. So far, we haven't heard of any problem, any glitch. In fact, I spoke to several election observers, and they said elections in Rwanda were held in a calm and peaceful way. President Paul Kagame and his family voted at a polling center near a school called Aperugungaiya in Kigali. The other candidates, Green Party candidate Frank Habineza and the independent candidate Philippe Mpanyama also voted here in Kigali. And so far, everybody seems to say that the voting was peaceful and calm. And right now, the National Electoral Commission has started counting votes following the voting exercise, and they expect to announce their preliminary results around 11 p.m. Kigali time.
Wow, that is pretty close for the announcement of the presidential results. But Eddie, critics of incumbent President Paul Kagame say that there was some sort of voter intimidation and that his campaign actually ferried people to his rallies. How credible is that report, and is he as popular as the campaign claims?
When you look at the campaign numbers, President Paul Kagame has been pulling a lot of crowd. In fact, during his last stop of his campaign here in Kigali, he was able to pull close to 500,000 people. And when you speak to the people within the ruling party, they say that saying that Rwandans live under fear or were forced to attend rallies was something ludicrous. That is what the vice president of the ruling party, Christopher Bazivamo, told me today, castigating or denying accusations that the elections were being held under a climate of fear.
Any fears of any violence flaring up in Rwanda?
There's no violence. We haven't heard of any incident at all. All the polling stations that I visited were peaceful, were calm. People would come, cast their vote, and go back to their normal businesses.
All right, Eddie, thank you very much. Eddie Rwema reporting for us from Kigali, Rwanda. Now, Kenya's August 8th elections has several fresh faces. The political newcomers include a rapper seeking a seat in parliament, a businessman running for president, while a prominent activist is promising to improve the governance system from within. VOA's Lenny Ruvaga joined activist Boniface Mwangi on the campaign trail in Nairobi.
Yes, we are coming back. From the protest march to the campaign trail, Kenyan anti-corruption crusader Boniface Mwangi is now looking to join the system he has spent a decade railing against. The 34-year-old hopes to bring greater accountability.
I'm tired with bad politics, I'm tired with bad leadership. I grew up in Sarehe where I'm running, and there's a lot of bad leadership. School playgrounds are being grabbed, markets are being grabbed, our young people have no jobs, and I want to go to parliament and fight for those people.
Last year, Mwangi was leading anti-government protests. His gateway to activism was his work as a photojournalist covering the 2007-2008 post-election violence. Now Mwangi leads his 4-month-old Ukweli party, which is Swahili for truth.
I don't think, as a young person who believes there's bad leadership, don't let money, lack of money, or lack of a popular name or a big name, or lack of a big political party stop you. Because complaining about bad leadership is not enough. You need to go beyond complain, do something about it. That means that you run for public office. Please do that.
Mwangi has never held public office, but he is not without supporters.
He has a track record fighting for the rights of the common man. Before joining politics, he fought against legislators increasing their salaries and land grabbing. Basically, assessing him is easy, unlike other politicians.
Two main alliances dominate Kenya's political landscape, and it remains to be seen how newcomers like Mwangi will do. Kenya goes to the polls August 8th. Lenny Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Standing by live via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya is Africa 54's Vincent Makori. Vincent, there were peaceful demonstrations today in Nairobi. What more can you tell us?
Well, quite a number of people came out, especially youth groups, and what they're saying is please maintain the peace. They're calling on the leaders on both sides of the political divide to ensure that they encourage their supporters to maintain peace. But a very important message is actually to the general population. You know, I saw a young man leading a group saying, well, remember, there will be a country after the election day, and therefore do not allow politicians to use you for violence. We are out here to elect them to hold political office so they can serve us, but we should not allow them to bring divisions amongst us or use us violently to get to their own personal ambition. So everybody's calling for peace, and that includes also clergymen. We saw them come together from all different religions to call on Kenyans to maintain the peace and on the leaders to stop inciting violence, whichever or whatever the case may be. They're saying, please maintain the peace.
Now, interestingly, Vincent, there are thousands of observers in these elections. Why so much global attention on Kenya's election?
Yeah, so, you know, actually about 5,000 international and other observers have arrived in this country to observe these elections, one can only think about how Kenya came into focus way back in 2007, but also being a country that is very strategically positioned to all regions of the world. People are keen to see that these elections go on peacefully, and Kenya can emerge from this election on the 8th as a country that is intact. So everybody is interested in these elections. They don't want to see a repeat of 2007, and so it is believed that this is a sign of also of goodwill, but also of concern worldwide, because they see there is a potential for an explosion like what we saw in 2007. They're hoping that perhaps by keeping a very close eye on the process itself and encouraging the leaders to maintain peace and hold an election in a peaceful and credible way, the country will stay intact even after the 8th election on Tuesday come next week.
Briefly describe the last few hours before the campaigns close.
Wow, it is a frenzy, it's a whirlwind of campaign rallies right here, not too far from where I am. The ruling coalition, Jubilee, was having one of the final rallies, a massive rally at Uhuru Park, calling on their supporters and others who may be standing on the periphery to give them their votes. They are basically begging for every vote out there. But that is also what we are seeing with the NASA, the opposition coalition that was in the coastal town of Mombasa today, asking everybody to come out and vote in large numbers. So we have seen quite a frenzy of activities in these last few hours before the campaigns close.
All right, Vincent, thank you very much. We'll keep watching Kenya's election. Thanks, Vincent. He is Africa 54's managing editor, reporting via Skype from Nairobi. Now, besides the many aspirants for political offices in Kenya's Tuesday elections, there are people outside of the political mainstream who are using their talents to advance the political, social, and economic conversation, hoping that they can influence positive change. One such person is Gatumia, the lead creator and producer of animated movies that focus on powerful political and social messages. Vincent Makori caught up with him in Nairobi to find out what inspired his latest movie, Kura, which addresses the issue of election corruption.
Last year, which would be 2016, I needed to do a project to test some new animation processes. And when thinking through what story I could tell, I stumbled upon a much larger action thriller type of story with an element of the electoral process. The themes of democracy, the themes of corruption and how that plays into it were very prominent in my thinking at the time. So the story for Kura, which is actually a Swahili word for vote, came to being in late 2016. I had hoped that it would simply be a tool to challenge us to think deeply about the kind of leadership we need to elect and also the process.
It was a kind of an eerie kind of coincidence because I had just watched your movie. And then a few days later, having come to Kenya, a person who was believed to be fighting any form of the corruption of the electoral systems, at least in the transmission of the election results, is found murdered. When you saw that, did you feel a little chill, like, wow? Because there's a kind of a similarity with the kind of story you're telling.
It actually started a bit earlier, in fact. Our General Nkaiseri, who was one of our senior-most generals, and so to speak, the person charged with keeping security through the election season, died just a couple of weeks before the election. A few days later, the person who was identified more or less as the lead in the information technology aspect of the electoral process was murdered, Mr. Chris Msando. And this was very troubling because the film was, on its own, already a sensitive topic and difficult to, it was an uncomfortable subject. For these things to have happened after the release of the film gave it a very eerie seriousness, so that in fact, at one point I began to wonder, was it a premonition that I had, or was it just because this is what we do, this is what happens, that there are interests so deeply and so viciously vested in the process that if somebody is deemed to be an obstacle, they are removed.
Kenya enjoys fairly free media, and I think there's a space for telling stories like yours. But given the sensitivity, around the issue of corruption, have you at some point maybe just felt a little concern about somebody looking at this and saying, who's this guy?
There certainly is concern, and I have felt a bit of a shudder when I think about the film and the events that have transpired around about the time of its release. But I'm also very grateful, and I think that should be something that's pointed out, that Kenya has indeed grown in its the freedom of expression. There's much more space for there to be questions asked of the powers that be. And I'm grateful for that. And I recognize and appreciate many people who paid the price for that freedom. But coming back to my own safety, honestly, there have been those who've warned me and questioned whether it's wise to release such a film in such a heightened political fervor. The atmosphere is very charged. But I think I felt duty-bound to say what I felt was impressed on my artistic mind to say, and to just pray to God that He would keep my family and I safe.
Now, the Young African Leaders Initiative being held this week in Washington faces an uncertain future after President Donald Trump administration's budget request called for a major reduction in YALI's funding. This is America's signature effort to invest in the next generation of African leaders at the Mandela Washington Fellowship Summit. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
The 2017 fellows are from both rural and urban areas of sub-Saharan Africa. They are between the ages of 25 and 35 and have established records of accomplishment in promoting innovation and positive change in their organizations, institutions, communities, and countries. VOA talked with some of the participants about what they learned during their 6 weeks of academic studies in the U.S. Leila Kakula Zeze is from Liberia. She is in nutritional health care.
I am a nutritionist. I believe in the power of nutrition, and I have been inspired so much by the American culture, especially their volunteerism work when it comes to in their nutrition interventions, like the food bank, Wheels on Meals. So I hope to go back and set Liberians on the track to health, nutrition, and prosperity.
Natcha Gurgel from Angola is a special needs educator.
Well, I'm inspired to help people with disabilities, special needs, and difficulties, because too often we see in our society in Africa that those people are avoided. And so if we want to fight for equality, the change must come from there. They are people too. They are humans with feelings, with thoughts, and sometimes talents, big talents. So those are the people who I want to help.
Manuela Elizabeth Pachuto is the founder and CEO of The Cradle, Uganda's first 24-hour workplace infant care center.
I've learned so much from this program. One of the things is the fact that you guys share a lot. You don't just do one thing for yourself, or it's what I've seen, at least in Oklahoma. And what happens is a lot of sharing in terms of business, in terms of ideas, in terms of workspaces, in terms of why should I be the one to provide every service that I want to provide? Why don't I call in people that are doing the same exact service or working in the same line of business but providing a different service for us to all come together and just provide one service together. I learned that in this program. I also learned a lot of sharing what I know, my experience with other people, just to make them better.
Axel Nadia Madozane, CEO of Axel Mad Company, is a fashion designer from the Central African Republic.
I'm most like a creative designer. I sketch and I have a staff of tailors working with me, and And so when we design, they just put together all the pieces to make the outfits, and then we try to sell on the Central African market. And also this year, after this program, I've learned a lot. So I've got the tricks on how to expand.
Upon returning to their home countries, YALI fellows continue to build the skills they have developed during their time in the United States through support from U.S. embassies, USAID, and affiliated partners through regional conferences, professional practicum experiences, and mentoring opportunities. Fellows may also apply for their American partners to travel to Africa to continue project-based collaboration through the new reciprocal exchange component. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. In most competitions, points mean prizes. But in this football league, the pounds you lose can win your goals. Man vs. Fat was set up in Britain in 2016 by a group of men who believed they want enough fat loss schemes aimed specifically at men. According to the organizers, peer pressure and competition is a perfect weight loss combination. Most of the men who join aim to lose between 5 and 10% of their body fat. Each team has a coach who will take details about their weight, health, and diet before every match. The aim is for men to play at least 2 matches each week. Organizers say they have acquired sponsorship and support from some professional football teams. And finally, birth control now available on your phone. It is called Natural Cycles, a non-hormonal, non-invasive form of contraceptive, claiming the title as world's first approved birth control app. That form of birth control traditionally is known as natural family planning, and that has been around since the beginning of time. The app tracks a user's daily temperature and menstruation cycle to determine fertility. Based on the data, it will tell what days you should use and not use protection. And that's what's trending today. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, Nigerian Afro-pop performer Yemi Alade. But first, here's a recap of today's headlines.
Please hold, please hold.
نعود تقنيين، نعود مهندسين.
Now, in our Music Makers segment, we feature music from Yemi Alade, a Nigerian Afro-pop singer and songwriter. And joining me in the studio to talk about Yemi's music is VOA's Roger Muntu, host of RM Show. Roger, it's always a pleasure to have you on Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Esther.
This is a wonderful young lady, and Yemi is no doubt one of the most talented artists in Nigeria and even in Africa, but she only rose to prominence in 2009.
Exactly, 2009. That's because
her?
She won a talent show, the peak talent show that was big in Nigeria, and that's when she started music, as you said a little earlier, in 2005. But she was not well known until 2009 when she won that talent. Then she was open, and then she went on and made a song that we all know, "Your Johnny." Where is my Johnny?
That's my Johnny. And Johnny is not the only one of her best songs, but she has also had several others, including "Marry Me."
Exactly, including "Marry Me."
We are actually going to play. Let's take a listen.
All right.
Wow, very, very good, Roger. Tell us a little more about "Marry Me."
About "Marry Me," in that song, Yemi Alade is talking about, you know how some young men just want to go out with the girl, but they don't want to marry them. They want to go marry somebody else, but
commitment.
Just no commitment. So she said, no, this is not happening. Yeah. You need to marry me now. Tell me so I can talk to my parents.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't wait. And Yemi's going to be our guest actually today at VOA. She's coming.
We've stolen a little bit of your limelight today on Africa 54. So she's coming to talk to you later on today. But is she planning to remain solo, or does she plan to do any collaborations with other African artists, or even some from Nigeria?
Very good question, Esther. Yemi is such a versatile artist, and she already has been doing a lot of collaboration with many other artists. Flavor, she had played with Mary J. Blige here in the States, and she worked with the Sauti Sol, from Kenya. Great songs. So she's really versatile, and that's what makes her more popular compared to other African female artists, because she tried to leave Nigeria to go and do a collaboration with other artists.
And Roger, before she came to the limelight, how did she start off, and how was her music received in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, when she started, she was in a group called the Spicy Girls, kind of like a little group of girls, and she, at that moment she was not. Her music again she was really struggling, and many of those talents are the talent that actually allowed those girls to come out and become popular. And Joni, Where Is My Joni came out, and that was Hate, of course.
All right, Roger, thanks so much for another fantastic Music Maker segment as always. And to learn more about Roger Muntu's RM show, visit Facebook and type in the keywords Roger Muntu journalist and get more information about some of his featured artists. Now, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, and we leave you with Yemi Alade and her music. Good night from Washington.
Baby, will you fashion me go away? But you go carry me throw away. Maybe you go fashion me go today. Maybe you go carry me throw away. Maybe you go fashion me go tomorrow. Maybe you go carry me go away. Maybe you go fashion me marry tomorrow. Maybe you go carry me marry tomorrow. She got me to it there until sugar is finished. What is the matter? Make you tell me the pampa. Poco a poco, little by little. Toronto, Toronto. Boy, will you marry me? Iga no more ever. Or will you fashion me? Iga no more.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An alley is a narrow path between or behind buildings.
Up one's alley.
Does this expression have to do with city streets?
Jonathan, do you have any friends who teach singing?
Hello. I am a singer.
You are? Oh, awesome. Do you